Right, so today discussing poor email practices. This session did stem from actually the 20th of May being Global Accessibility Awareness Day. So I had hosted the first session on that day. But of course, we got the second round here. So thank you all for spending some time with me today to review these items. And so the first half, we'll see how quickly we can get this first email out to you all. Again, thank you for providing those email addresses to us, making that easy. But we're going to get the first email out to you and tell you that there are actually 8 accessibility errors within that email that we're hoping you will be able to identify. So we'll give you a little bit of a moment for that, and then we'll discuss it as a group. And of course, looking at those poor email practices, so crucial to identifying, but of course, we'll look on the Marketing Cloud side as well on how to not follow with those practices and do things better. And then we do have a second email that's going to go to you all, and I'm not quite going to tell you what the theme is just because it does give it away a bit. Want to see if folks have this at front of mind when you're really reviewing your emails. And so we'll do a similar group review on that. And so while I upload your list, I am going to turn things over to Jen Mortensen, the eComm program director, for a moment. So she's actually, I went through this with her a while ago, and I'll just let her speak on her experience of it, give you some insight.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So as Mel said, I had the good fortune to get to do a test run of this training with her last week. And I want to encourage all of you that although you might think that someone who's actually on the eComm team supporting users would immediately catch every single error in the messages that Mel is going to send out, that was not the case for me. There's a bit of content here that's going to give you the opportunity to think about a number of different factors that go into designing the best emails. But I guess one thing that always comes to mind for me is that you can build a beautiful email with beautiful content that aligns perfectly with your plan for marketing and communications and your overall strategy. But there are small things that are sometimes easy to forget when you're doing that, that actually lead to a much better experience for the recipient of your communications at the end of the day. So some of you might want to respond through group chat today. We also welcome you, shouting out an answer if you see one. Mel will provide additional information on that, but this isn't designed to be a high pressure exercise. So we hope that you'll enjoy it as much as Mel and I did when we were going through it together.
Alrighty, that should come through pretty quickly. But I will go ahead and share on my screen the email that will be coming to your inbox. And I think I just actually heard mine come in as well. But I'll go to the edit screen on this and just give you all a moment or two to see if you have any accessibility errors that you notice within these emails. And once you find them, you are welcome to start putting them into chat. If you're someone who really wants to spend the time and find all 8 of those errors, maybe don't look into chat right away. But I think Jen mentioned earlier that I think she only found 6 or 7 of the errors. So I'd be impressed if anybody got all of them.
I left my number off to protect myself, but thanks, Mel.
Just sorry. Throwing everyone under the bus these days. And I do see someone's already called one out. I'm going to hold off on verbalizing it for a moment, but absolutely, very good find. Oh, I'm failing to scroll on this, you guys. And of course, you all should recognize this email. I'm sure why you're here today. But we did go ahead and break some items within this email, not how we initially sent it out. Nothing else from anybody? Lovely. Yep. So this image up here, having text on it is a definite no-no. Very good. And the other one that we've seen somebody already identified is throughout the email, we're seeing some of these buttons where we've got white on gold. And that is also not accessible. And I'll dig in a little bit further with some slides explaining more around this. Wonderful, Naomi, that hyperlinked URL. We see up here at including the entire URL. Yeah, big no-no. We'll see why. Well, Naomi's rocking it. Yep, click here. Very nondescript text is also a big no-no. Looking at that email. Good job, Claire. Alt text on images. And that is one that I think Jen didn't get. And we'll talk about that in a moment. It's depending on how, if you've already accepted seeing images or something, you might not be able to see that accessibility no-no. So that header image, I'm actually categorizing under two kind of accessibility issues. One being that alt text, which in this case is not blank, but it is just repeating the text that is already on the email, which is not providing context of why that email is here. That's kind of the title of one of our stories, if you will. So again, just that text being on an image is not good. And part of that goes to the contrast that I think this image is somewhat okay, or I'm not saying do it, but maybe not the best example where having black text going across dark blue and then onto the gray envelope and the white letter, that can be difficult for people to read. So that's another reason why text on images with a lot going on the background might not be readable. So some best practices around those alt text, and what I see far too often is that there's just no alt text, and just, right, whether somebody forgets it or they feel like they can't really describe their image well, just think, oh, I'll just leave it blank. What's the big deal? And so screen readers, when there is no alt text on that image to read to them, you instead get the description of the file or the name of the file, which some of us probably name them really well. And a lot of us also probably have a somewhat good name added by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you know, your 8th image that you uploaded. Or it can just be complete nonsense. And so having all those characters read to somebody when it really adds zero value can be very frustrating. So if you're in that case where you don't know what alt text to put there, the preference is to type null in there. Say that you are not putting alt text in there by writing null. And I hesitated on doing this a lot initially, but the reason for that is with screen readers, it's gonna take that null and just kind of skip over that image. So a much better experience for individuals using a screen reader. The other important thing, that alt text is displayed when people don't have their images downloaded. So again, a reason I might not expect you all to have noticed this one. And I actually had to pull an email that we don't even send. It is from our friends at UC Health, but they are a great example of using quality alt text. And so you can see where these images should show, they're really describing them. And so that should entice people to download those images. And so if every single image you had on here was reading null, 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 yeah, somebody's not really inclined to download that. You're telling them there's no real reason these images are there. So if at any point you do find yourself adding null into every single image as the alt text, it might be worth asking, are these images really enhancing this content? Maybe we can pull more diagrams that we can describe to articulate complex topics, or just adding images that are less like icons that evoke more of a feeling that you can describe. And so while these things are all just lovely to do, there's a real function behind encouraging people to get these images downloaded. And it comes back to tracking. So the way that tracking is completed within Marketing Cloud and many tools is with an image. It's a 1 pixel image. And if people do not download it and they open that email, that might not be in your tracking. So encouraging people to download those images can help get much more accurate open rates. Great for targeting future communications. Those inaccessible links, and I think 2 of the 3 were called out, which is really good. And I didn't know the last one until somewhat recently. So that full URL, good job, Naomi, where someone with a screen reader is painfully going to hear www.cu. It's terrible. Much rather that there's some readable text being linked to that exact same URL. It's better for people who are seeing it, and it's better for people who are not seeing it and using that screen reader. Good for all. That click here, nondescript at its finest. And so a screen reader, and I very much do this when I'm linking text to see if it makes sense or not, a screen reader is going to read link to, click here. And so if they're scanning through all the different links and everyone says, click here, link to, click here, they're going to ask, where am I going? So it's much better, link to, register now. There was one down at the bottom where the link was not underlined. It was in this blue text, but there's people, right, colorblind. They cannot see the difference between that black and that blue text. And so when it's not underlined, they have no idea that it is a link. On the flip side, and I've seen this a few times where people will use underline to emphasize, whether it's in a paragraph or to emphasize a title or something, that appears to be a link to people. If it is underlined, that is the primary indicator. So it is not a best practice to underline things unless it is a link. We do tend to add that, making sure they're all underlined and making sure they have that blue hyperlink color. Throughout the message, and we had this one called out, that white text on gold is not good. And if you ever wonder if things are accessible, if people can see it, you can really just go ahead and search for a contrast checker. And I personally use this web AMI one, but there's many out there that are perfectly fine. But you are able to see that that white text on a gold black background. Oh, CFB. There we go. On that gold, whether the text is really big, whether it's bold, whatever, it's failing across the board. So there's a big chunk of the population who's not going to be able to read those buttons. Change it to some black text. Passes. We like that. And the next one, nobody found, and I can't say I'm surprised because I honestly don't know how you would identify it within your own inbox unless you're going through it on a screen reader. So not utilizing header text or these tags. And I'm going to pop into Marketing Cloud to actually show you this. So as people read, initially people scan, and then they'll read more content once they've scanned to an area that is relevant to them. And so while we've very much pretty deliberately called out our title of our communication, right? It's our May newsletter. Our spotlight story is this Identify Poor Email Practices session. And then we have some tertiary stories down here as well. And so if you are not leveraging tags in order to format these, and what that means is seeing tertiary titles here. Oh, I guess I did add one in there. That's good. Sometimes what you'll see is it might look exactly the same, but it's not styled here. And what that style, hopping in here and actually saying, no, be a tertiary style, that's allowing somebody on a screen reader to scan in the same way that you would visually. And so if those title or these primary, secondary, and tertiary titles are not applied, those header 1, 2, and 3 tags, it makes it really difficult to scan. All righty, I do believe that is all for those, and I am going to pop back into a different email to get you all another email to identify what these 4 mistakes are. And we'll go ahead and send it out, and we are good. Cool. That should start ending up in your inbox pretty quickly, but similarly, I will pop back to that communication just so we can look at it in this view, if that helps anybody. And of course, this one being a little different in that we did not tell you what the theme is. There are 4 errors throughout this. I'm going to give you all a minute to see if anybody can figure it out, but I won't keep you on the edge for too long. I will go ahead and tell you. We are looking at 4 mobile mistakes.
I didn't get this either. Mel had to give me a hint. So I feel better that I'm not the only one who did not automatically catch this.
And I think that's the big point, is the number of times you send a message, oh yeah, 5 people approved it. Oh no, somebody got it in mobile and we've got this error and this error. Just, yeah, if you don't look, how would you know? All righty. So the first one is around pre-headers. And this might be, as my team knows, one of my biggest pet peeves. But it's because it's your final wrapping of a present. This is, you've written this email, presumably you're inviting them to an event or sending them to another website, and it's just wrapped not great. It's just like, okay, well, that's how it was received. So it's just such an important opportunity to just put a pre-header in there, leaving it blank, or duplicating the subject line is not considered a well-crafted sub or pre-header. You can definitely put a little bit of different effort in there, and oftentimes you can take it from the body of the email. But I've gotten to a point, I've worked with people where they say, don't include it, I don't mind. And I say back to them, you might not mind, but your constituent does, and that's who we're serving, right? So I know I put this in our collaborative community, a well-crafted pre-header can increase your open rates by 7%. Which is a lot with the number of emails we're sending. So do not skimp on that. I put it as a bad practice for mobile because you're definitely seeing that pre-header, but more and more, I think people change their settings within their desktop as well. So that kind of 2 fronts there. I am considering the text on the image. I know we talked about that as a poor accessibility item, but it's also bad for people on a mobile device. In this example, you might be able to read my little title, but I see people put event dates, time, Zoom links. Yeah, nobody's seeing that on a mobile device. Don't put it there. It's not accessible. It's not good on mobile. Go ahead and use text blocks instead. As Eric mentioned, that black text on a black button, and I will show that in the design in a moment. But the other piece, and this can kind of get stylistic, the mobile scale on thumbnail images. So depending on what image you have there, sometimes if it's set to fit to scale, it can start looking really pixelated on mobile. So our advice is to either not set it to scale to fit so it doesn't get pixelated, or you can just completely hide it in mobile. Shorter, sweeter message for those mobile devices. So I will quickly show you, I know we're right at time, but just where that button component is that we can see. Oh, sorry. Within mobile styles, that you do have that button text on here. So in this case, it is indicating black. So I would probably want to go ahead and change that to my gold. And now when I look in mobile, we're getting a better experience. And similarly to this little block, I mentioned before that our advice would either be to not scale to fit it. So it looks less pixelated, and maybe it didn't look that pixelated on your devices. But that is a really good option, but you can also just go ahead and hide it on mobile. So it does get rid of some of the graphics, but we tend to like it.
Hey Mel, can I jump in with a question?
Absolutely.
Do you find the little mobile display tool to truthfully, represent these sorts of things as they would on a real mobile device?
I think yes, with the caveat, to the same degree that the desktop version is showing you what will render. I am aware there are certain outliers, and especially with mobile, I think there's more ways to download the Outlook app. There's different avenues that I have seen some issues arise in that we've had problems resolving for. But for the most part, yes, I do trust that. I do want to point you all, I know we are at about time, but from our eComm website, if you click into our help, that does get you to our entire eComm wiki. And so if you haven't already explored our index, essentially, or need help, start here. It's a really valuable resource that Jen's put together. And so if you do want to dive deeper on some of these topics, that Marketing Cloud tab, some deeper information on accessibility. Those are two really nice resources, as well as a deeper look on how to design for mobile, as well as many other things. But with that, thank you all for joining today. I really appreciate it, and hope you all have a wonderful remainder of the day.